All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Right Now. So we have been covering, obviously, the governor's race here in depth. As it stands right now, we are likely going to be seeing Javier Becerra, the Democrat, take on Steve Hilton, the Republican challenger, in the general election. But what I want to go ahead and do now here, Jack, is let's switch gears and let's take a look at the 48th congressional district. So this is obviously one of the districts that was sort of targeted by Democrats when Prop 50 was passed as potentially being one that could be flipped. This was a longtime Darrell Issa district. This now includes parts of Palm Springs, but East, North County. And the results that came in, this is a race that we touched on just a little bit, and I believe both of you said we expect County Supervisor Jim Desmond, the Republican, to sort of come out on top here. Now, it was maybe a bit of a toss-up. I don't know if we talked about that, about which Democrat is likely to come out, but as we see here, Marty Von Wilpert, this race has been called, by the way, by the Associated Press, so it will be those two that move on to the general election. So I do want to start with the question here is, obviously this was a district that was sort of identified as, could this be flipped from red to blue? If we go into the general with a Marty Von Wilpert versus a Jim Desmond, obviously likely going to see that consolidation of Democratic support, probably higher voter turnout, especially with the governor's race there on the ballot. So what do we think? Is this an example of Prop 50 working and, primary results are going to be skewing this? Or is this like, oh, whoa, Jim Desmond might have a grasp on Issa's district here? Laura?
Jim Desmond cleaned up.
I
mean, it's hard to consolidate a vote. We talk about it like it's a given, and particularly on the Republican side, because Republican voters are loyal and kind of get their directions and follow them. But I think you got to give Jim Desmond credit. Like a large swath of the district is in his current constituency as he serves on the County Board of Supervisors, and he served those voters well enough for them to line up behind him without question. And so he cleaned up, and I think that's, he needs credit for that. I don't know, Wendy. What do you think?
I think it was an interesting race in that you vote for somebody that's a known quantity that's done well for you. And I think Jim Desmond is another one of those sort of non-extreme, non-controversial candidates on a lot of the issues that matter to your electorate. And given, picking up on something Laura said earlier, you have to learn what those issues are depending on where you are. And if you're now talking about a broader geographic area, including some of my favorite areas, you talk about parts of Palm Desert, and you have districts that sometimes stretch into places like Riverside and all the different places that those maps expanded. You need to learn fast what are the issues in those districts. I mean, if it's fires in LA, maybe it's lack of rain. In some other places, it's flooding. If you have a coastal district, it's mudslides and train disruptions. I mean, knowing what that means, knowing what those issues are, will allow you to say what you need to say to win the hearts and minds of your voters, even after redistricting. I hope that's what candidates are doing all across the nation, because redistricting is coming to a jurisdiction near you if it hasn't already.
I did think that, especially as someone who's covered Supervisor Desmond here for the last 8 years, I think one of the things that he is very adept at is, we hear a lot of politicians talk about kitchen table issues, things that people are talking about. He is always so quick to put out a lot of messaging on things that he might politically disagree with, but he always frames it as taxpayers. And I wonder if that is something that it's almost like this is a job that sort of like fits him. You guys mentioned Javier Becerra meeting that moment. I was surprised when Desmond got into this race. I know that he had congressional aspirations. He was potentially going to challenge Mike Levin for the district up north, where it's a little bit closer. Then obviously things changed, but it does appear, Laura, like he cleaned up, like you said. And I wonder if this is almost one of those puzzle piece type fits. Does it look like with this district?
Well, to borrow from is it a puzzle piece? Well, this race is going to get nationalized.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be about flooding, and it's what got him in the door. It's not what's going to get him across the finish line. And so he's really going to have to be able to comment and take positions on national level issues, and a lot of it will be a little bit beyond his control. The turnout of Republicans, the energy behind them, the Republican voters like him. That is clear from the primary. Now the question is, can he get to know voters who don't know his profile already, and do they find him persuasive, and do they want to check the box by a Republican? Because that fight for independence in a district that's a swing district. So this district is what in the game we call a D+4, which means that there are a few more Democrats in the district than Republicans, and then there's a good chunk of independents as well. That's what makes a swing district. When Gavin Newsom and company drew this district, they thought, okay, this is going to be a shoo-in for a D. I don't know that that's the case. That's going to depend on a lot of things, including Jim Desmond's candidacy and how he performs. But I was telling Wendy in the green room, I'm actually excited to see this race because both Jim Desmond and Marnie Van Wilpert have not had the profile of communicating on this level with this spotlight before. So it's going to make for some really interesting debates and campaign trail work from the both of them.
Now, there was also another Democrat who locally here, I want to ask about this. I know we're running out of time here, but Amar Campa-Najjar, this is someone who has run for Congress before. This is someone who's run for mayor before. This was someone who had seemingly a profile and that pathway to getting into public office. And he today announced on Instagram his political career is over. Why was, if you guys have any insight into someone like Amar Campa-Najjar not being able to connect with voters here in San Diego County to the point of winning an election? I mean, because obviously he had very close finishes. This one obviously not being able to break through in the primary. Any analysis there on Amar Campa-Najjar?
I think, Amar's tried and failed in multiple different districts, multiple different races, and I think that's challenging for any candidate, and I know that he put forth his best effort here. But I will say, I don't want to forget about Marnie Van Wilpert. She beat him, but she also just won. She was such a sterling candidate. She consolidated support. I'm wearing my pink blazer today because there were a lot of women that won in underdog races. She was outspent by the opposition. She was targeted. She did narrowly miss the Democratic endorsement, and she just simply beat him. And so I think she deserves her flowers in this race. And I'm not sure that Amar's not going to be back. I will say, he seems to like running
his
for
Instagram
office.
caption.
It's a hard habit.
That's a statement these days. It's but he did say my political career is over. But I think you're right to obviously point out this is someone who was young, who has had political aspirations. As for someone like Marty Van Wilpert, you mentioned obviously that this is a district now that with the redistricting, has more registered voters. I think back to the CBS California interview with Katie Porter, where it's, how do you convince Trump voters to maybe come to your side? But I think that's a good question because this is a swing district. What does Marnie Van Wilpert need to do to also acclimate herself with some who may have voted for Trump in 2024, who might be independent, might be Republican, might be Democrats?
Well, she'd need to portray herself more in line with the values that those voters have. And we see lots of candidates trying to do that, but you need that authenticity. And you also need to be teachable. We talk about why Steve Hilton's such a great candidate. He's an outsider, but he's teachable. He may not right now know every issue he should be arguing, but he's going to be smart enough to listen to people who do. If someone like Marnie is to appeal to the other side, she'll do the same thing. I mean, isn't this she's got a great occupation. She's got a great following. She seems to have really good instincts. She's likable. She's charismatic. Why wouldn't she be able to connect with voters that she didn't think she was going to have to win over?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one of her arguments on the campaign trail has been, I've bested Republicans before in competitive districts, which is very persuasive to Democrats at this time. But I think the way that she's done that is through shoe leather and conversations. Like when she gets into one-on-one conversations, when she gets in front of town halls, she so far has been able to be trusted. And I think that's because she also, she'll talk about the deficit. She'll talk about issues that are important to conservative-leaning independents who, don't automatically check the box for a D. But that is her challenge. That is her challenge. And so we'll see now if that can translate into a larger stage and a very different medium. Communicating online is different than communicating at the door. Communicating in debates and forums is a lot different than, sitting down to coffee with your neighbors.
And despite the Prop 50 advantage, it still looks like it's going to be a challenge because, in a redistricted area like the 48th, to see a 41% vote getting even in a primary is incredibly impressive. And if you're someone, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican in your state has done this redistricting, this is something that maybe gets you a little bit on the edge of your seat because these are some of the unintended consequences. Everything that was based off of the maps, all the data, all of that can change in an instant. So it's not always a guarantee. So I want to ask you, hypothetically, if this ends up remaining a Republican-held district seat, if you're a Gavin Newsom, Is this still a success, the passage of Prop 50? Or if you see this in a state like Texas, or if you see it in a state like Florida, South Carolina, Louisiana, Alabama, is this still a success even though you're not batting 1,000, I guess?
Well, you have to take the chance. So you have to take the chance knowing, and I don't think at the time that Prop 50 was passed, we'd know that the Voting Rights Act would be in the dustbin of history, and virtually all of the black districts in the South are going to be redistricted into conservative-leaning districts, which is by the law that the Supreme Court passed down, that partisan districts are not illegal, and that the protections that once guarded and were the bedrock of the Civil Rights Act are now nil and void. That means there's going to be a lot of conservative districts, a lot of Democrats redistricted out of the entire South. I don't think Gavin Newsom could have predicted that. So taking a shot on a few districts in California that are competitive, that I think it was something. I don't think he would change it, and that from a tactical perspective, I don't think sitting on your hands was the answer.
Okay. You know what? Do you guys have like 2 minutes here, real quick? Just thoughts. LA mayor's race. It looks like it's going to be Bass and Pratt. What do you think it represents?
I think it represents people wanting to give change a chance, wanting to potentially usher in the golden age of the Golden State in one of the most significant cities in the country, and I think that's what that represents.
Okay, Laura?
I think it is an emblem of the attention economy and our ability to focus on stirrers of the pot. And will have outsized influence if they're able to do that, especially on the Republican side.
Pot stirrers.
I was hearing about the Shy Pratt voters. That's what I was seeing on one of the national networks I was watching yesterday.
There were a couple that were interviewed that were Steyer Pratt voters, and I thought, wow, okay, that is definitely an interesting
It's kind of akin to the Mamdani Trump voters that we saw last November.
That we saw as well, too. Okay, thank you guys so much for the last 2 days helping us out. I think I can say officially, you can go home now. You guys are allowed to go home, but thank you so much for helping us out, helping our viewers get all of that analysis in here.